Welcome to the Tilted Halo. This is a new podcast, and it's for anybody who's a woman in ministry. You might be a pastor like myself, a bishop, a priest, a rabbi, music minister, elder, children's minister, whatever your title is. You're absolutely in the right place, especially if you're someone who loves your ministry and you're doing it well and you're feeling pressure to sometimes be perfect, and deep down inside, you know you're not. And how in the world to deal with that? And men, you're absolutely welcome here too, because this is about ministry and the same thing can happen to you. So you're all in the right place. Let's get started with the show. You know, Pastor, you really should. Oh, how come you didn't do it this way? You ever heard anything like that? Some criticism or some kind of negative feedback? Yeah, it happens. It's very true. One of the beautiful ways that has been depicted is in the movie Chocolat from years and years ago. It's a story about a woman who moves into a French town and makes chocolates. But there's a priest in the town, a young priest who comes into town. And I don't know, the kind of the town leader, whatever his title is, kind of like a mayor of the town, believes it's his responsibility to tell the priest what he should say. And basically ends up writing all of the messages for the priest. And the priest just can't quite bring himself to saying, that's really my responsibility, not yours. And I'm the one who knows, the theology and things like that. And so for a good portion, most of the movie, this town official is writing the messages for the priest. Not at the end. I'm not going to spoil the movie for you, but I would recommend that movie to anybody, Chocolat, or Chocolate, for those of not French pronunciation. But there's so many times where there are people within our faith communities who say things to us as a faith leader that it's critical. And sometimes it hurts. And sometimes it's unfair, not accurate, all of those kinds of things. And how do we deal with those things? There are a couple of things to think about with that. Number one, anytime we hear criticism, regardless of who it's from, number one, it reflects that person's point of view, that person's understanding. And sometimes we don't have to take that. We don't have to agree with that person's perspective and realize that, yes, that's one point of view, but it's not the only one. And obviously it may not be our point of view about things either, but the whole idea that that's the only way to see something. And for that person, yes, that may be the only way they can see something at that particular point in time. But that doesn't mean we have to feel that we're wrong or bad because that person does not agree with us or does not share the same point of view as we do. And so the first thing when there's criticism and negative feedback is not just remember the source. That's too simplistic. But it's a way of remembering that, yes, there are other ways of seeing things. And that comment, that critique or criticism is that person's perspective. And may not be the only one that's there. That's a possibility. A second thing to do when receiving some negative feedback or criticism is to tell somebody, well, thank you. Thank you for letting me know how you feel. Thank you for sharing your perspective with me. You can even say, I will take that into consideration, or I don't agree with you on that, but I appreciate hearing what you have to say. Now, obviously, if you don't appreciate hearing what somebody has to say, please don't say that, because then that's not being truthful for who you are. But if there's a possibility that you could take that in and consider what the person is saying, that maybe there is a grain of truth in what they're saying. Maybe there's more than just one grain of truth in what they're saying. And there's a way to say, thank you, and I hear what you're saying. I will think about that, and we'll see where that might go. But it's important to remember that each person is entitled to a different point of view from ours. And that sometimes that's hard for us to agree with or to accept. That, yeah, maybe somebody does have a different point of view and it can be just as valid as yours or mine. And I'm sure some of you may have, as you listen to this, different points of view about what I say. Okay, that's valid, Doesn't mean I will agree with you, but it is equally valid to have a different point of view. And there are always more things to think about than what most of us think about at any one given point in time. So remember that it's that person's point of view. And if you can honestly and accurately say this, let the person know that you have heard what they've said and that you will take things into consideration, or that you will think about that. However, you can honestly respond to that. There is a time and a place where somebody's negative responses can be so negative and so judgmental that it's not helpful, that it gets in the way of a relationship. And anytime we say or we hear from people, well, you should do it this way, or you should and believe or say or whatever comes next, or any faithful believer should do X, Y, or Z. Every statement of how somebody should do something is a judgment. It's a way of saying that's the way it's supposed to be, and since it's not, it's wrong. Listen for that within yourself. Do you should on other people? Do other people should on you? Years ago, I heard somebody say that the 11th commandment is, thou shalt not should upon thyself or others. And Jesus himself tells us, don't judge others, because when you do, you will be judged in the process. So look for ways when you give feedback to people to have it be constructive and not criticism, but to have it be constructive. Let people know things that they've done well and say, have you ever considered adding this or doing it slightly differently? And look at that from other people as well. Ask them, oh, do you mean you would like me to consider doing it slightly different? How would you like that? What do you think would look better? What do you think would be a little bit better as to how we might do something? And so ask some questions for clarification. Don't assume that you're understanding what the person is really meaning and saying. Sometimes the initial statement and sentence comes off pretty harsh, but that may not be all of what they're meaning. Some people kind of talk their way through what they're thinking. And the reality of what they're thinking comes somewhere down the line. And when there's criticism or negative feedback, that can be kind of hard to put up with until you get all the way down the line and hear what they're really wanting to communicate. And it may not always be so hard when it gets to that point. It may not be so negative. It may be something they're concerned about for themselves, and it's not about you at all when you come down to think about it and hear it. So ask some questions for clarification and do it in a way that really wants to hear. Well, can you please tell me a little bit more about that? Is what I'm hearing is that you're upset about this. Tell me more about that. Is that really what you're upset about? Is that what you're wanting? So ask some questions for clarification. A question at that point in time can be a very good gift to help somebody else clarify what they're really trying to communicate and say to you. So criticism and negative feedback is never usually the kind of thing that we like to receive, but there's always more positive ways to deal with that. And as the more that we can do that, the more it helps other people be able to do that too in their own lives, to model the kind of way that we would like other people to respond and to be able to share something that is maybe some feedback that's a little harder for us to hear. I've heard somebody recently use the term carefrontation instead of confrontation. So feedback can be carefrontation, if I can say that right. Carefrontation. Confront somebody with care and concern rather than like a brick wall, rather than being, an offensive player on a team. And you may be like me because I know that when somebody hits me with a lot of offensive stuff that I find offensive, that puts up my barriers and I become defensive. That's the gut reaction that's there. And I really have to struggle at that point to stop from coming back at them with the same sort of criticism, negativity, getting into, you're telling me this, well, I'm telling you, it becomes a whole fight then, an argument in a way that's not at all helpful. And nobody wins in that kind of a situation. And everybody goes away feeling unheard, uncared about, and it's not helpful in relationships, whether it's within your family or within a faith community. So learn some good communication skills. And the best communication skill is to learn to listen. That's the first fundamental communication skill that everybody needs. And listening means hearing not only the words, but the feelings, and sometimes it's the unspoken things, that sense of what is somebody really trying to communicate? Are they scared? And in their fear, speaking out in anger? Do they feel hurt? And it's coming across as anger. And in those situations, if we can get down to that original feeling that's there, then we can do something constructive with that. We can address that. If need be, ask for forgiveness for it. Talk about it. Work through the situation. But if we just come back, punching verbally as hard as we feel like we've been, so like somebody's words have hit us, that's not helpful. And it's not going to solve anything. And I know that most faith leaders have some good communication skills, but we're human too. And we have those buttons, the tender spots within each of us too. So we need to be careful, very careful, in how we respond to the criticism and negative feedback that we may be getting and that we will be getting. It's not maybe, but there are times where it will come because that's human nature and that's who we are as human beings. So think about how you respond. Is there a way to respond and say, well, I hear what you're saying. I thank you for sharing that. This is how I understand something, and it's a little bit different. But, let's talk about this some more. Let's think about how we could work through this kind of situation. See how something like that will go. And remember, it's that person's feelings that you're dealing with. They may say you, meaning yourself as the faith leader, well, why did you do it this way? Why did you? And very accusing, but it's their perspective. And regardless of how many you words are using in that, come back with I words. I hear this. I understand this. I have a different perspective on this. I would like to share my perspective on what happened. Are you willing to listen and be open to hearing that? Come back with the I language. Or even I apologize. That's also a good one. When it's needed and when it's valid. I apologize. So yes, there will be negative criticism and feedback, but there are faithful ways to share God's love in the midst of that and to be loving and caring, even in the midst of the times where there's all that negative. And to do it in a way that's caring and showing some of God's love through how we respond in the midst of that. Until next time, God's peace, God's blessings, and find some ways to be grateful today. That's always a good thing. You have been listening to Tilted Halo with me, Kathleen Panning. What did you think about this episode? I'd really like to hear from you. Leave me some comments. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode. And catch another upcoming episode for more conversation on ministry, life, mindset, and a whole lot more. Go to www.tiltedhalohelp.com, where I've got a resource guide and other resources waiting for you. And be sure to say hi to me, Kathleen Panning, on LinkedIn. See you on the next episode.